Assalamu alaikum. Hi everyone. Hope you all are doing well by the grace of Almighty. At first, I would like to thank our honorable and beloved Madam Dr. Fatim Husna for giving me an opportunity to prepare a presentation on Chapter 6 for Consumer Behavior class. Let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Haq Nur Alam. Metric number Z2024887. As I mentioned before, my presentation will be on Chapter 6, which is the self, mind, gender and body. Now, I am going to start my presentation. I hope you will enjoy it. So, let's begin. The self concept strongly influences consumer behavior. Before discussing it, first we should know what is self. From a classical sociological perspective, the self is a relatively stable set of perceptions of who we are in relation to ourselves, others, and to social systems. The self is socially constructed in the sense that it is shaped through interaction with other people. Now the question comes, does the self exist? Both Eastern and Western cultures believe that the self divides into an inner, private self and an outer, public self. The West tends to subscribe to an independent understanding of the self, which emphasizes the inherent separateness of each individual. On the other hand, non-Western cultures tend to focus on an interdependent self where we define our identities largely by our relationships with others. The self-concept. The self-concept summarizes the beliefs a person holds about his or her own attributes and how he or she evaluates the self on these qualities. The self-concept is a complex structure. We describe attributes of self-concept along such dimensions as content, intensity, and stability over time, and accuracy. Again, a person's self-concept is a work in progress. Some parts are fairly stable, but each of us modifies some elements of it as we make our way through life. Identity. Each element that contributes to our self-concept is an identity. One way to define identity is any category level with which a consumer self associates that is amenable to a clear picture of what a person in that category looks like, thinks, feels, and does. Self-esteem. Self-esteem refers to the positivity of a person's self-concept. For example, people with low self-esteem expect that they will not perform very well, and they will try to avoid embarrassment, failure, or rejection. Social comparison. When a person tries to evaluate her appearance by comparing it to the people depicted in these artificial images is considered as social comparison. Now comes ideal self and actual self. The ideal self is a person's conception of how he or she would like to be, whereas the actual self refers to our more realistic appraisal of the qualities we do and we don't have. When a consumer compares some aspect of himself or herself to an ideal, this judgment influences self-esteem. For example, we choose some products because we think they are consistent with our actual self, whereas we buy others to help us reach an ideal standard. So now the question comes, are we what we buy? Self-image congruence models suggest that we choose products when their attributes match some aspect of their self, and when we choose a product that we think is aesthetically pleasing, this choice makes us feel better about ourselves. Compensatory consumption is a term which is used to mean specifically the notion that people might cope with threat through consumption. Symbolic self-completion theory suggests that people who have an incomplete self-definition tend to complete this identity when they acquire and display symbols they associate with that role. For example, adolescent boys may use macho products such as cars and cigarettes to bolster developing masculinity. These items act as a social crutch during a period of uncertainty about their new identity as adult males. Now I will talk about the extended self. The extended self is constituted of those external objects that we consider a part of us. For example, in some cultures, people literally incorporate objects into their self. They lick new possessions, take the names of conquered enemies, or bury the dead with their possessions. There are 4 levels of extended self, which are individual level, family level, community level, and group level. Individual level. In individual level, consumers include many of their personal possessions in self-definition. These products can include jewelry, cars, clothing, and so on. Family level. In family level, this part of the extended self includes a consumer's residence and the furnishings in it. Community level. In community level, it is common for consumers to describe themselves in terms of the neighborhood or town from which they come. Group level. In group level, we regard our attachments to certain social groups as a part of the self. Now moving to embodied cognition. A simple way to explain embodied cognition is that states of the body modify states of the mind. In other words, our behaviors and observations of what we do and buy shape our thoughts rather than vice versa. There are 2 types of embodied cognition. First one is power posing, which affects our brain activity and again the self-fulfilling prophecy at work. And second one is enclothed cognition, which refers how the symbolic meaning of clothing changes how people behave. Now I will discuss on the digital self. Now there are a lot of applications which allows virtually anyone to dramatically modify his or her digital self at will, as we strategically modify the profile photos we post on Facebook or the description we share on online dating sites. Wearable computing. Whether devices we wear on our wrist like the Apple Watch, on our face like Google Glass, or woven into our clothing. Increasingly, our digital interactions will become attached to our bodies and perhaps even inserted into our bodies as companies offer ways to implant computer chips into our wrist. Virtual makeover. New virtual makeover technologies make it even easier for each of us to involve the digital self as we choose products to add on our physical selves. Now I am moving to next slide. Gender identity. Gender identity is an important component of a consumer's self-concept. People often conform to their culture's expectations about how those of their gender should act, dress, or speak. We refer to these sets of expectations as sex roles. Sex role socialization. Marketers tend to reinforce cultural expectations regarding the correct way for boys and girls, men and women, to look and act. Many societies expect males to pursue agentic goals, which stress self-assertion and mastery. However, they teach females to value communal goals, such as affiliation and building harmonious relations. A recent comprehensive review of the research literature reported 5 basic conclusions about gender differences. First, males are more self-oriented, whereas females are more other-oriented. Secondly, females are more courteous responders. 3. Females are more responsive to negative data. 4. Males process data more selectively and females more comprehensively. And finally, females are more sensitive to differentiating conditions and factors. Gender identity versus sexual identity. Gender role identity. Gender role identity is a state of mind as well as body. A person's biological gender, for example, male or female, does not totally determine whether he or she will exhibit sex-type traits. Neuroendocrinological sciences focuses on the potential role of hormonal influences on preferences for different kinds of products or people. For example, evidence suggests that women who are at peak fertility are attracted to men who display evidence of higher levels of testosterone, and these women are also more interested in attending social gatherings. Unlike maleness and femaleness, masculinity and femininity are not biological characteristics. A behavior that one culture considers to be masculine might get a different response in another. For example, bromance, which is affection between straight male friends. In some cultures, they are free to show their affections between two male friends, while other cultures they don't. Sex-type products. Obviously, many products are intimately associated with one gender or the other, especially if they link to a culture definition of what is sexually appealing. Marketers promote many sex-type products. They reflect stereotypical masculine or feminine attributes, and consumers associate them with one gender or another. Again, there are female sex role, male sex role, and androgyny. Androgyny refers to the possession of both masculine and feminine traits. Now I am moving to next slides. The body. A person's physical appearance is a large part of his or her self-concept. Body image refers to a consumer's subjective evaluation of his or her physical self. Ideals of body. Our satisfaction with the physical image we present to others depends on how closely we think the image corresponds to the ideal our culture values. So what is the ideal of body? An ideal of body is a particular model or exemplar of appearance. Ideals of body for both men and women may include physical features. For example, an ideal beauty for women is a well-rounded derriere, Or an ideal beauty for men is a well-defined six-pack, as well as clothing, styles, cosmetics, hairstyles, skin tone, and body type. Body decoration and mutilation. People in every culture adorn or alter their bodies in some way, which is considered as body decoration or mutilation. They do it for different purposes. For example, to separate group members from non-members, to place the individual in the social organization, to place the person in a gender category, to enhance sexual identification, to indicate desired social conduct, to indicate high status or rank, to provide a sense of security. Now I am moving to the final slide of my presentation. Here I am going to talk about the summary and the learnings of this whole chapter in a nutshell. Firstly, the self-concept strongly influences consumer behavior. Consumers' self-concepts are reflections of their attitudes toward themselves. Whether these attitudes are positive or negative, they will help to guide many purchase decisions. We can use products to bolster self-esteem or to rear the self. Secondly, products often define a person's self-concept. We choose many products because we think that they are similar to our personalities. The symbolic interactionist perspective of the self implies that each of us actually has many selves, and we require a different set of products as props to play its role. We view many things other than the body as part of who we are. People use valued objects, cars, homes, and even attachments to sports, teams, or national monuments to define the self when they incorporate this into the extended self. Thirdly, gender identity is an important component of a consumer's self-concept. Sex roles or a society's conceptions about masculinity and femininity exert a powerful influence on our expectations about the brands we should consume. Advertising plays an important role because it portrays idealized expectations about gender identity. Fourthly, the way we think about our bodies and the way our culture tells us what we should think is a key component of self-esteem. A person's conception of his or her body also provides feedback to self-image. A culture communicates specific ideals of beauty, and consumers go to great lengths to attain these. Many consumer activities involve manipulating the body, whether through dieting, cosmetic surgery, pitching, or tattooing. Sometimes these activities are carried to an extreme because people try too hard to live up to cultural ideals. One common manifestation is eating disorders, diseases in which women in particular become obsessed with thinness. Finally, every culture dictates certain types of body decoration or mutilation. Body decoration or mutilation may serve such functions as separating group members from non-members, marking the individual status or rank within a social organization or within a gender category, or even providing a sense of security or good luck. That's all from me. I hope you have enjoyed my presentation. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.